Good morning, vlogsters. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Look, I got coffee and I'm sitting up. I don't know how long I'll be able to sit up for because I've been sitting up for a while and I was like, oh, I'm sitting up. I feel kind of good. Let me start the vlog here and then I'll just jump in bed when it starts to hurt. But I've really been sitting here for a long time. I don't know if you noticed, and I would like to first apologize if you're freaked out, but I'm going to tilt the camera down because I'm actually in my commode, but I'm sitting on the cover, and I have my full nightgown on. The reason
Here's your reminder. Take my meds.
I didn't realize it was 7 a.m. already.
Here's your reminder. Take my meds.
Okay. So I should do that. But I just figured when I lay back down. But I was sitting here like trying to wake up because I had gotten up so early with very little sleep last night. So I was like just sitting here and I was like, you know what? I think the height and the angle of the commode is actually much more comfortable than the bed because the bed's higher and it's squishier. And just today, maybe tomorrow I'll feel differently. Today, right now, I feel like, yay, I can sit up. And I just chose to sit here. So I'm like, I have the cover on, I'm dressed. So it's not like, I'm just using it like a chair. So grab your coffee, say good morning, good morning. So this is what my husband made me. I said, I got this sugar-free caramel drizzle. I think I told you guys about it because the coffee he made me last night was awesome. He's like, but you don't have that much cold brew left. I'm like, no, that's okay. What I want is, can you make me regular coffee, put a little caramel macchiato in it with whipped cream with caramel drizzle on it. Now the caramel, the Smucker's caramel, sugar-free caramel stuff is made with Splenda. So I know a lot of people on keto don't do Splenda. So that's kind of keto, kind of not. Like, it depends on, I think they call it dirty keto when it's not pure and good ingredients or whatever. I think I'm like, you're like right in my face. So let me back you up a little bit. But for right now, I'm doing good. It feels good. And I'm enjoying this beautiful cup of coffee. I wish you could see, yeah, you can see the layers in there. It's in my friend's cup because I miss my friends. So today is I want to say bittersweet day, but here's what I want to say. Today's the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I remember exactly where I was when the World Trade Center fell. I could tell you that story if you guys are interested, maybe a little bit, but today is the 1-year anniversary of my brother Rob passing. Just about 1 year ago at this moment, I think. Actually, no, because they're an hour past us, so a couple hours ago. I guess when I woke up. It's weird now that I think about it. So I said to Jim yesterday that today might be a very hard day because anytime that something reminds me of him, like, and not just reminds me of him, but reminds me of what he could be missing or what we're missing, and it does make me sad, but there is a lot going on with my health and with my family's health that I'm more focused on that right now. Kind of keeping us from meeting him so soon, if you know what I mean. So I want to say the day was bittersweet, but I was like, said to Jim yesterday, I'm like, tomorrow's going to be a hard day. And he's like, only if you let it. And that was very poignant. It was very helpful. And I said, you know what? Whenever we celebrate a loss of a family member, we celebrate their life. We don't commiserate their death. And I was like, well, why should today be any different? I mean, today's different because it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11. But why should today be any different with celebrating the life as opposed to commiserating the death? Now, I will tell you, there was one thing that I had saw, a story that I had seen, that was proper English, just left me for a second. There was a story that I had seen about a woman who was in the self-checkout line at Walmart, and this woman was like, a guy was online, like the one register, and then the lady with her kids in tow was at this register, and she was self-checkouting, like groceries, toys, whatever. And he watched this older lady who was standing right by her, and he thought they were together. So he kept watching just because like he was curious. And as soon as the lady was done ringing her order, the older lady came and took her card and shoved it in the machine. And the lady looked at her with the kids and she was like, "What are you doing? I'd like to pay for my food." And she said, "Can I say something?" She said, 22 years ago, I feel like that was 22 years ago. 22 years ago, I lost my husband to cancer. And one of the last things I asked him, like, "What can I do for you while you're gone?" And he said, "Do this for me. Do a random act of kindness for a stranger. Buy them something in my name." And the guy who was watching this all unfold was touched. The woman was touched. The story was amazing. And I thought that would be the best thing. What I could do every year on Rob's birthday, because my brother was very generous. What I could do is that, even if it's just pay for somebody's order in the McDonald's behind me on times when my money might be tighter. I mean, I've done that random act of kindness, pay it forward type of situation a lot of times. I'm not saying it to brag. It's just not a new thing for me. So it was like, do I do that? Or do I actually go and say, swipe a card? So that's what I wanted to do today. But obviously being home, can't run into the Walmart. But I wanted to time myself to see how long I could sit. Now I did start the time. I did note the time before I actually started recording so that I can like add that time to the time here. Just so you guys know. And I say that because I might just be like, okay, gotta go sit down. But for right now, we're doing good. But even though I can sit, like I'm like, oh, since I can sit, could I get one of those cart thingies? And I have a friend who said she has a electric wheelchair that that's for like plus sizes, and I could borrow it. And I'm like, I can't really sit, so that's not really an option. But if I can sit longer, the more and more I can sit, then more and more I can participate. I actually said to Jim, I'm like, if I can get out to the living room and sit on the couch, I can always lay down on the couch if it starts to bother me. And he's like, yeah, I know. He's like, the bathroom. And I was like, forgot about that. So the biggest concern we both had about sitting out in the living room is, and you guys know, over the course of the last couple of years, I sometimes have these moments of like just random, like, I don't want to say incontinence is the word, but just having to go really quickly, but not being able to move fast enough to get there. So his concern is if like I'm in there and I'm in the bathroom and I try to rush, that's where I usually hurt myself. So that was his concern. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. And I mean, I do understand, but I'm going to keep practicing. I'm going to keep sitting up here. This is a great height. I'm starting to feel it, I will tell you. I know it's been about, hold on. Alexa, what time is it?
It's 7:07 a.m.
I know you guys probably just got mad at me because all your Alexas just told you what time it was, but so I've been here currently for about 30 minutes. And that's good. Yesterday I was up, I was sitting for 25 minutes straight, which was good. And actually it was probably closer to like 45 minutes with a small break in between, and then some walking. But I sat for a very long time yesterday, which was good. It hurt at the end because I was doing 2 separate sessions of seating, but I did it. And that's really what's important. It's all the little goals. So if you watch the video, watch the live stream, watch the video yesterday on 9/11, then you know that what my diagnosis was. So we're going forward with that. We're just waiting for the doctor, the orthopedist, to call back probably Monday. His office closes early on Friday, and my appointment was in like later in the day. So anyhow, he did a really good job. Oh, if you guys are interested in my 9/11 story, I think I've talked about it once before, but on September 11th, 2001, Jimmy and I were married just a year. We actually went on our anniversary we went to Disney World on September 12th, 2000. But we were basically on a plane like 1 year prior. Not that that makes a difference. It's just around that time. You know, that's what I was trying to say. We got married in August, but we didn't go on our honeymoon until September. Right before September 11th. So September 11th was a Tuesday. On the Monday before was Labor Day, and we had gone out to Montauk, Long Island. They have, or the Hamptons really, they have a Shinnecock, the indigenous Shinnecock tribe that's there in Montauk. Or actually that's the Montauk tribe there. They have a Shinnecock powwow basically every year, which is basically like a Native American powwow where they do traditional dancing and serve traditional food and that kind of stuff. So I was working at a group home with men, and a lot of them went home for the weekend. So there was a handful left, and me and the other staff member went out to that to go there. His name was Glenn. Glenn is amazing. Glenn and I have a funny story someday. I have to tell you that. I'll tell you really quick. I went to go for the interview for this job, and I had seen Glenn at like recreation events, and we used to sit across the bench from each other and just chat it up. Like, you know, we didn't work in the same house, but worked for the same agency. So we had similar, you know, we would talk about things. And so I've seen him before, and he always looked familiar. But when you work in a big agency, you're like, oh, I must have done a training with you, or I must have seen you in the hallway or whatever. So I do my interview, and then he comes on staff after the interview's over. He comes because he's reporting for work. And we were talking, and he mentioned something about the church that he goes to. And I said, what church do you go to? And he said, St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm like, that sounds really familiar. Where is that? And he goes, in West Hempstead. I said, oh, I went to high school in West Hempstead. And he's like, oh, yeah, me too. I said, yeah, what's your name? And he's like, Glenn. I was like, yeah, duh. I was like, he said, Glenn Walsh. I'm like, Glenn Walsh? Jeri-Ann Adams. And I was like, he was in a heavy metal band. So he had like 80s metal hair all through high school. And now at this point, he was in, I guess we were 30. So he had his hair like pulled back and it was shorter. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, what a freaking small world. I was like, I'd seen you at rec, and you always looked familiar. I'm terrible with names, but I'm so good with faces. And I was like, you always looked familiar. And I just thought it was from seeing you around. And he's like, this is insane. This is crazy. So we ended up working together, and we just had like the nicest relationship. Like, he loved gym. We used to go. We hung out at his apartment. He's actually excellent guitar player. He's played for like famous people, but he is like does all these great little songs. And he used to write songs about some of the individuals, and you know, they felt so blessed to have a song written about them. And he wrote me a song. He goes, just Jeri-Ann, you can count on Glenn. That's my whole song. But anyway, we had gone out with him. It was me and Glenn, and then a handful of the guys went out. And afterwards, he said, do you want to go? My sister invited us over for a barbecue, and she lives out here. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Sure, of course. First of all, free food for the guys anytime, you know. They're all on very limited budgets. So anytime we can get them free food, score, you know. But we stopped and got like the dessert dish or whatever to bring. So we went there, and it was amazing. So on the way home, this is so random, this part of the story, but it's the part that I remember. On the way home, we were on like, there's Ocean Parkway, which is like it's on the south shore of Long Island, and it's sort of like a long 2-lane like ocean view parkway that sometimes during like bad storms shuts down. That's how close it is to the ocean. You can kind of see like, it's like road, dunes, beach, like that. And then ocean, obviously, on the other side of the beach. So, but it's a beautiful ride. There's like hardly any traffic unless it's the summertime. And this was obviously, the summer was over. It was after Labor Day. Or it was Labor Day, let me put it that way. So the trip was beautiful. We got on to the point where we get over this little bridge, and you can see the city, depending on how clear the day was. You could see the World Trade Center, and sometimes the Empire State Building, and sometimes the Chrysler Building, depending on the day, honest to goodness. If you guys, you know anything about aeronautics or whatever, it's like they have this visibility check. So visibility is at 10, visibility is at 0. Is the scale of like how well, like the pollution in the air and the atmosphere and all that stuff affects the visibility. So I got a picture of the city because I could see the World Trade Center from the bridge, and I took a picture, and I know that I have it still. I don't think it got ruined. I think it's in the book, but it was just weird to me that I had just taken this picture 1 week before the end of the towers. Now, my personal story with the World Trade Center was all through high school. Well, okay. I went there the first time in 1977 on a class trip. We were in second grade, and our class trip was to go to the top of the World Trade Center. There was an observation tower up top. Basically, you can pay and you look through the things and you can see home, because we lived in Island Park. It was so little, didn't even have a high school. However, we had an electrical plant that had these very specific, one beige tower, like a stack, like a smokestack, and one red and white one that was super tall. So on a clear day, if you were at the observation tower on the World Trade Center, you could actually see home, which was kind of cool when you come from a little tiny town, you know. You know, from my town, you could see the World Trade Center, but you never expected to see your town from the World Trade Center. So next to the industrial thing was like this hill that went over and turned down to this other street. Now, the top of the hill, and I call it the Ocean City one, because behind the power plant with all of these like oil tanker, water tanker, big giant, like the big giant round, I don't know how to describe it. Looks like a canister, but it's like these big giant round canisters. If I can get a screenshot of like the aerial view from like Google Earth, I will share it. Oil City, not Ocean City. I don't know where I got Ocean City from, but Oil City we used to call it. So the bridge was like at the top of Oil City. And both when I was in high school, I used to take that bridge to go to high school. And when I worked at the house in Valley Stream, or I think that's anytime I went into like Lynbrook or anywhere, like anytime you went to Oceanside to visit my cousin Kelly, you would have to go over this bridge. So at the top of the bridge, all the time, I would look for the city. Now, I didn't look for the city for multiple reasons, but A, it was a good indication of what the weather was like or going to be like. Excuse me, because most of the time the weather was coming from the city. But it was a good indication of like the air quality, and that was a big thing when you have allergies. Plus, it's going to sound weird, but I felt like they were my friends. They were built around the same time I was. My dad worked on them when he was a steel worker in 1973 to 72 to 73, 73, 74. I have like the little book that it's basically like your union dues book he had, or the check-in book. Like he has a little tiny book about being a steel worker there. He laid the rebar in the cement floors. Like that's the job he specifically had that he was assigned to. Now remember, my father was alive during 9/11, so we had a lot of conversations about this after the fact. But anyway, the top of the hill was, some days you could see the towers so clearly, and they felt like they were so close. And sometimes they were really far away. Like if the air quality wasn't good, it kind of works like a magnifying glass, like not a magnifying glass, but I guess the opposite. It kind of works like if it was really lousy out, then they would be further away, like they would seem very tiny. If the weather was really good, they would seem really big. So I got the job at the group home with the men at night. I was working from 2 to 11 every night because I was the assistant manager. The manager worked during the day and the assistant manager worked at night. I had like 1 or 2 days during the week I would work with him or whatever. But despite that, sorry. I just realized I never worked the sleep out of my eyes. Forgive me. Sorry about that. So I was working till 11. By the time you get home, because it was in North Belmore, I was probably asleep by 1 or 2. Probably more like 2. And that's if I left on time. Like a lot of times when you're the assistant manager, you want to make sure everything's great in the transition, everybody's done, and that kind of thing. So I was asleep. Jimmy was working nights too, and we were asleep. And my brother called me at, I think it was like 9:30, possibly. The plane had hit, planes had hit the one tower. No. I'm trying to remember because, again, it's 20 years ago, so forgive me. All that I do remember is that we already knew we were under attack, and I think both planes and the Pentagon were hit at that time, but that would make it 10 o'clock. I can't remember if I was awake and he said put on the news and then I was awake while the Pentagon got hit. All I know is from the time he woke me up to the time that I realized what was going on, the first tower fell. So I grabbed my camera because I had gotten a camera a few years prior and I was loving taking photographs. And I got my tower and I got my zoom lens. It only went to 200 millimeters, but it was still the best one I got. And I drove to the top of Oil City. I drove to my spot. I basically parked, got out, stood on the corner. And I got there just in time to take pictures of the second tower falling. And I have them. I don't know where they are. They're somewhere in a photo album. Because remember, since then, a lot has happened. I also have a picture, and I don't know the date of the picture, which kind of disturbs me, but I have a picture where I did go and take a picture of them, like previously from that point. Like I parked up on Oil City, and I was like, oh, it's a really good picture of the World Trade Center today. So I have all of these pictures in my head because they're pictures that you can recall on. I remember crying. At the time, we didn't know that people were in them still. Because there was, from where we were, there was such a long time between the attack and the collapse. We were all firefighters and firefighter families, and we were like, okay, how'd the rescue go? What was the plan? What was, we didn't have any idea. Now, we knew that some people had died because where the planes impacted, but we also knew that it was before office hours, most office hours, some office hours, as we realize now, but, most jobs are 9 to 5, and these attacks happened at 8:30. So there were people who got to work early, and there were people who had early jobs. And then there were people like my friend Deanie. Her dad worked for NBC, and he actually usually got off by then, but worked late. And he worked in Tower 1, the one with the antenna. So that's what he did. He was an engineer who made sure that we all got to see NBC. So he passed away. But they didn't know for a while. Like, nobody knew anything really for a long time. Unless your family member got to be able to make a phone call and tell them that, because a lot of people did know that their family members were stuck in offices on the floors above the plane crashes. And so, sorry, it's bringing back a lot of memories. It was a very sad time. It was a very hard time for a lot of people. I was so grateful and blessed that I only knew people 2 degrees away. Like, I wasn't impacted directly. I didn't know anybody directly, which I'm so grateful for. However, since I have family members that worked on the pile who have still since succumbed to different cancers, and friends and stuff, not just family members who have succumbed to cancer because they were police officers or first responders, and they asked first responders to come and volunteer because they had lost so many firefighters, and it was a 24-hour operation, and they just needed people, and they didn't know. People who are first responders, they don't think about the danger they're running into. They take every precaution they can, but they still go in wholeheartedly, just dive right in. So, that's my memories for now. Afterwards, the world was different. Our jobs were like, we all need to report to work. We don't know what's happening. Don't report to work. That's what it was at first. It was like all live-ins will basically take the staff that's there will have minimum staff, and all these different things they had planned. You know, day programs were shut down for the day. Obviously, everybody not got to go home early, but everybody went home pretty early when they realized what was going on. So it was a lot of things logistically, like personally in my life, that changed. But it's funny not being and not knowing for a couple of days that who had passed away. You know, we didn't always know because there was people who got sent to the hospitals, and then finding that records. As you can imagine, it was a little bit of chaos. Even in the best organized situation, there's still chaos. So I have to tell you that I cried. And again, I didn't know that there were people in there because I considered those towers my friends. I know that that sounds crazy, and I know that sounds dumb. And you guys will get on me about all of my love for inanimate objects. But to me, I had such a relationship with them over the years. We had, you know, obviously we grew up together. I know that that sounds silly, but I first gone there, like I said, when I was 7. And I've been back many times. I've been with my friends, with my friends when we were teenagers, with my friends when we were young adults. My sisters actually took like, I think they celebrated my one sister's 21st birthday. And they went to like Windows on the World, and they were like all dressed up, and it was like, they looked amazing and that kind of thing. So there is so much for so many, but this is just my little story. I do feel bad after the fact that I never called my mother-in-law. She was living in New York, and I got so caught up in my feelings that I actually never even called her. And it was really, I have to, and not in my defense, but how my story goes is that I heard this shocking news and immediately went up to see what we were talking about. Like I grabbed and I didn't think about calling my sisters even. Like I didn't call my sisters. I didn't make sure everybody was okay. My brother told me everybody was okay, but we didn't know. My sister-in-law was actually, took the train, and the train actually went under it, but she had basically not gotten there yet, which we say was a blessing, or she passed through it already. Excuse me, I can't remember which, but everybody would, like, we had a few close calls, let's put it that way. And I listened to country radio at the time, Y107, and every Thursday morning they had, I think it was Thursday, maybe it was Friday, no, it was Thursday, they had gone down to the plaza of World Trade Center. There was like this big plaza between the tower, not between the towers, but like in front of them, where they always had like free concerts. They, Garth Brooks and whatever, not really, I don't know if Garth Brooks did it, actually, to be honest with you, because I probably would have went. But like different country stars would come and perform a little free concert there in the plaza for the radio station. And that to me was like a big thing, like that was part of where I was at the time. So it was life-changing. It was life-changing. On the first anniversary, Lisa and I went to, or maybe it was the second anniversary. one of the first earliest anniversaries, Lisa and I went to the Toys R Us, and I believe the Toys R Us was in Brooklyn. It might have been in Queens, but I think it was in Brooklyn. And they had like a parking garage up high, and we went up there to watch the lights, basically, to see the 2 giant lights that they had projected, one where each tower had stood. The pile took forever to clean up. It smoldered for a very long time, like I think like 10 days maybe. It just like you'd go by and see smoke. Not go by, but the same bridges where we would see the World Trade Center, we now saw this big billowing smoke. I have pictures of that too, because I was obsessed with my camera at the time. So, I've been sitting here a really long time, haven't I? I'm feeling a little bit of pressure in my knee and now down to my calf, but I'm not minding it. It's not terrible. And I didn't take my morning meds yet, so there's all that. So, that's where we're at. My little brother was in college upstate, but I knew he was safe. My sister Jane wasn't working at the time. My sister Alicia wasn't working at the time. And my sister Julie had already moved to Las Vegas. So I knew that my family was safe. My one cousin did work in, he was a transit officer. It's all right. Port Authority. I'm Port Authority officer. He knew a lot of people that passed, but he wasn't working that day. Thank God. He wasn't on duty that time, so he didn't pass. Thank God, like I said. So it was nobody that I knew directly. It was just people that like Deanie's father and a kid we went to high school with that I never met in high school. Even seeing his picture, he didn't look familiar, but you know, like situations like that. So yeah, I mean, I worked for a couple who both worked on Wall Street at the time, and well, she wasn't working at the time, but that's where they met, working on Wall Street. So they had many friends that perished. Gratefully, he didn't work at the World Trade Center, so his office building was not there. So it was just a lot of harsh reality. The world did change. The world we lived in changed. There was actually a really great commercial, and they said, like, they showed a street in Queens, and they said the terrorists of 9/11 thought that they could change the view of our world in an instant, or change our world in an instant. And then they showed the same block, and everybody had an American flag on their porch. And then they said, and they did, because we all had gotten such pride in ourselves. Now, I do realize that in looking through it through 2021's eyes, a lot of wrong was there too. Like, if you had if you were in they didn't, okay, 9/11 memorials and insurance companies and hospitals did not recognize LGBTQIA plus relationships. So if you were a 25-year-old spouse, you know, you couldn't get legally married in the United States in 2001. So if you were a 25 anniversary, like if you marry, you know, or even common law marriage to somebody for 20 plus years, you didn't get any benefits because wasn't recognized at the time. Now, do you think that somebody, the government or whatever, would go back and rectify that at this point? You would think they might, but nobody makes that kind of effort, you know? I think some people did actually get retribution, not retribution, oh. I love how you guys are probably screaming at your screen, like yelling at the word that I'm trying to remember. Oh gosh, they didn't get reparations. Thank you. Oh goodness, right? So I know some people have gone back and taken care of that and gotten that taken care of, but for the most part, you know, no. And the way that we as a nation treated people of color, and I mean more like if you were Middle Eastern, if you were Indian, if you looked like you could have been Middle Eastern, people weren't very nice to you. And obviously not all people, obviously, that's very true. But still, you know, we can be biased to hate in this country. So obviously it wasn't great for them. And then, of course, so many young men and women just wanted to jump into war to protect the nation and to have retribution, to retaliate. And, you know, that also had its has had its problems as well. I'm starting to lose my speech because I'm starting to like not feel good. So I'm gonna turn this off real quick. I don't even know if I should just say goodbye. No, I'm gonna lay down and I'll finish the video there. Okay. Okay, so this is the position you guys remember the most, right? Oh boy. Okay, so takes a lot out of you sometimes. I'm so proud of myself. You know how long I just sat there for? Yay me! Okay. It was a very long time. I want to say almost an hour. I have to actually look back at the exact time, but And then changing positions always takes it out of me a little bit. Oh, I forgot to take my medicine. Changing positions always takes it out of me a little bit. It causes a lot of pain at first because I feel like your muscles kind of get used to being in one position, and then you're using them in an opposite position, which is good for you because, yeah, but yeah, still they just like take a minute or 7, breathe through it, that kind of thing. So I don't have very much more story to tell you. I just really couldn't even like sit there long enough to give it a wrap up. So I ask you to keep my family in your prayers today. Obviously, it was yesterday, but I hope that you're keeping us in your prayers just for them all to get through this day well. And to remember those who have given their lives, lost their lives, sacrificed themselves to save others, and those who went and lost their lives and served our country, both, not just people who lost their lives, but served our country for doing what they thought was the absolute best that they could do to help out. So I do appreciate every member of the military, whether they work in an office to ensure that frontline soldiers get their mail, those who work to make sure that veterans get their VA benefits, and those who are fighting for homeless veterans, and those who, just everyone, I want to start getting emotional because of all the work that still needs to be done, but also all of the work that is being done tirelessly, effortlessly, with a lot of effort. I really do appreciate everybody, and I'm so grateful. But I wanted to thank you all for being here and joining me, and for cheering me on and giving me words of encouragement and hope for what's to come. Okay, I wanted to just remind you to always find joy in your day, to always find something to smile about, because smiling increases your face value. And always, whenever given the chance, dance like nobody is watching, because it's about you. It's not about them. Okay? I love you. And as always, you take care. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Boom.